Hello, I'm Adam from the FTC Team 14892 Venom out of the Alliance Academy for Innovation in Cumming, Georgia. And today I'm going to be presenting to you all about the Think Award. So what is the Think Award? The Think Award is often thought of as the most prestigious technical award in FTC. It's mainly about underlying math and science, mechanical aspects of your robot, and programming. And this award, 9 out of 10 of the times, qualifies you for state. And the one most key component that you must have to be able to be considered for the Think Award is an engineering portfolio. And your engineering portfolio must focus on the design and build stage of your robot, and underlying math and science aspects are required. So to be able to win any award, at first you have to display gracious professionalism. So that is the same for the Think Award. The Think Award is not just a technical award, but also you must show the key aspects that FIRST is looking for. So gracious professionalism is what FIRST is built off of, and it means to put your best effort into everything you do while treating others with kindness and respect. But gracious professionalism also means something different to every person, and you'll want to be sure to exhibit gracious professionalism at your competition to be considered for the award. So in judging for the Think Award, you want to highlight the key points from your portfolio in your interview. So you want to talk about the function of each mechanism, the purpose of each mechanism, and the skills you learned throughout the season. So some of those skills could be technical or mechanical, such as CNCing or 3D printing, or they could be soft skills like interviewing or reaching out to companies, how to send a proper email for a sponsorship. Judges want to be able to know about all of the skills you learned for the Think Award. Now you also want to talk about redesigns you made throughout the season. So if your team went from like a 4-bar to a linear lift, or a linear lift to a scissor lift, you want to talk about why you made that change and how it benefited or possibly hurt your team as a result of that decision. And then you want to mention any custom designing. Custom designing can be such as like CNCing, anything you CAD'd and 3D printed. That it shows that you guys took a step farther in the design process than just using Rev or Tetrix or AndyMark parts for your robot. And then also talk about your team's favorite or unique mechanism / manipulator. And we'll talk about that a little bit later inside the presentation, as that is key for both the Think Award and another award. And then anything you see highlighted in red comes from the FIRST Awards manual for the Think Award. And that is essentially each slide will have something highlighted in red coming from the FIRST Awards manual. And we're going to discuss about what you need to do to be able to qualify. So the most important part of qualifying or being able to get the Think Award is having your engineering portfolio. And we're going to share 5 organizational tips with you and some examples on the next slide. So from the FIRST Awards manual, quote, the engineering content within the portfolio is the key reference for judges to help identify the most deserving team, end quote. So you want your portfolio to be something that highlights what your robot is able to do in the journey you took throughout the season. So some of the ways you can do that is by allowing for each mechanism to have its own page. And this allows for judges to be able to quickly look through your portfolio without having to look too closely or avoid them skipping over something that was actually very important. And then you also want to highlight important math and science concepts. So the math and science concepts are important because they show that you put more thought behind your robot design process than just coming up with an idea. Also, utilize a unique design format. You don't want to use something that you copied off of the internet. You want to use something that is unique to your team. So if you have like specific team colors, go ahead and use those. And then use team members' first names only. You don't need to include any last names, as last names can just become a little too specific and judges just want to see the first names. It's plenty enough to be able to clarify who on your team you're talking about. And then lastly, avoid long paragraphs. Long paragraphs can mean that judges will skip over them because they'll get bored or they don't want to read that much. If you use shorter bullet points or just short paragraphs and more topics, they'll be more likely to nothing is skipped over. So here's some of our 2 of our pages from our portfolio last year. and you can see each mechanism had its own page, our chassis, and then our feeder. And then we also used red and black, which are our team's colors. And then we only utilized our team members' first names. We didn't include any of their last names. And each mechanism is shown inside of pictures, and we didn't include too long of paragraphs. We broke it up into multiple smaller topics to make it more visually appealing. And then lastly, we highlighted all our math and science concepts to make sure judges did not miss them. So the most important aspect or part of what you want to include inside your portfolio for the Think Award is your design process. So your team's design process should be unique, and you want to include in your portfolio a step-by-step explanation of your team's robot design process, and also include short examples of how you used your design process, because that way judges can kind of see or get a picture in their mind of what you were talking about. So here's an example from our portfolio. We had two members each come up with an idea, and they both CAD'd it and drawed it and explained it to their entire team and made sure the entire team was aware of what they wanted to build or what their idea was. And then they took a vote on it. And the vote was 5-2 in favor of the rotational ramp. And we ended up CADing that design to make it fit with our rest of our robot, and we used it for the rest of the season. So this was just one of the examples we included of how we used our design process. So a step in our design process was parliamentary procedure. And parliamentary procedure was a way of making important decisions on our team. It was essentially a style of voting. So there was 3 steps to it. Someone presented an idea, another person seconds the idea, and the team votes on the idea. So we used parliamentary procedure. We found out about another team that used it a couple years ago, and we decided to use it ourselves. And we were able to document it inside our portfolio, and I suggest you document it too if you use parliamentary procedure on how you use it and why you use it. Also, using the parliamentary procedure lets your entire team be aware of what is going on and avoids constant arguing between team members. So now we're on to underlying math and science. And this is something that you'll definitely want to include. As I stated earlier, you want to be sure to highlight your underlying math and science in your portfolio. So now we're going to talk about why you want to include it to start. So documenting the math behind every part of your robot shows judges the thought process of your team. You didn't just come up with an idea and thought, oh, it'll maybe work. Nope, being able to include the math behind it shows that there was reason you came up with the idea and chose to implement it. So some of the examples of the math and science you can include would be like physics, trigonometry if it's a shooting game, linear algebra is more essential for programming, and calculus. Highlighting calculations in the portfolio to draw them as attention is key. I have said that twice now, and I hope you guys will be able to do that in your portfolio to make sure judges don't miss what you have highlighted. So here are some just examples of physics calculations. They can be torque, gear ratios, RPM of motors, or some of the trigonometry can be launch angles, automated positionings, or lift calculations. And trigonometry and calculus are mainly used in programming to determine positioning for different mechanisms of the drivetrain, and same can be same with linear algebra. So here's an example of our team using underlying math and science. It was just a real simple example. It's just a real simple example from our portfolio. So we had a motor that had a built-in gearbox of 5-1, and it made our flywheel spin at 1200 RPM, but the power was reduced to 25% to make the motor spin at 300 RPM. So just small examples like this can show judges how you were able to come up with a decision and why it worked. Or you could also include more specific and complicated examples. For instance, our team had to calculate the stall torque in our motors on our drivetrain. That was a little bit more complicated, and we'll be sure to include that inside of our portfolio for this year. So one of the more underlying topics that many teams skip over when the Think Award when putting it inside their portfolio is the skills they developed. So many teams will not discuss what their team learned throughout the season And judges want to see that area of where you can grow throughout where you can grow. Not everybody is perfect, and they want to be able to know what you guys accept that, and you're able to continue learning. You haven't just topped out, that you want to continue growing your knowledge in robotics. And some specific examples can be if you learn how to CNC, 3D print, or maybe you learn some Java. And these also can be skills again that are like soft skills, like programming and interviewing skills. So skills developed and lessons learned can be very similar, but the lessons learned can show both the successes and failures you learned throughout the season. So you want to put an emphasis on the redesigns you had and how those redesigns were either a success or a failure and how they compare to your old robot. And a great way to be able to show the lessons learned you had throughout the season are through problem and solutions. So here's an example of us using a problem and solution. So we had a problem where the blocks from last year's game Fright Frenzy were too heavy for us to pick up with our current gear ratio. So we had to implement or switch the ultra planetary motor gearbox for the intake from a 5-to-1 reduction to a 20-to-1 reduction to allow for more torque in the intake, which helped bring the weighted blocks up to the back of the ramp. Another example is from 2 years ago inside of Ultimate Goal. We talked about our old chassis design and then how we switched to a second generation robot with a new chassis. And we talked about how we used that chassis, what kind of improvements it had over the old one, and also specifically why we chose to change the design. So mentors are needed by everybody, and the judges want to see how your mentors helped them or helped you and how you acquired them. So include examples of how your mentors specifically helped you or came up with an idea or helped your team through a difficult time. And if you recruited your mentor or you got partnered up with them somehow, mention that inside your portfolio about how you partnered with them or how you recruited them and how they came to your aid. So here's an example from our portfolio where we talked about all of our mentors and how we connected with them and how they helped us throughout the season, as this can include teachers, your robotics coaches, some of the local companies or some of your outreach sponsors, and even parents. So game strategy. Oftentimes a robot with a less complicated design or a simpler strategy is able to go out there and defeat a robot with a complicated design just because they had the better game strategy. They knew how to attack the game that year and knew how to score the maximum amount of points with their robot. So you want to include your game strategy inside of your portfolio. What do you do during a match and what kind of capabilities do you have? You also want to talk about any autonomouses you have. So often teams will have like 3 different autonomouses inside of that they could possibly run during a match. Talk about each of them and write about a paragraph about your team's primary strategy in the match and how you would work with your varying alliance partners based off what their robot is able to do. And the key to being able to for the game strategy and why you include it is to show your team's versatility. You want to show that your robot is able to do multiple parts of the game instead of just doing one repeated action. So pictures, they are very important inside of your portfolio to include as they tell the story of your team's journey, and pictures also catch the attention of judges. They are more appealing than words. So images judges like to see are CAD screenshots, team members working, robot action shots, and hand-drawn sketches. All of these pictures allow you to almost use them as proof that you did an outreach event or you redesigned your robot. And pictures can clarify your wording for judges. So if you're maybe not the most clear of writer, being able to reference a picture will let you be able to have the judges understand more of what you're talking about. And then something very important to include is to make sure you don't put any links in your portfolio. Don't put any links to your Instagram page, to your Twitter page, to your website, whatever. Just don't include your links, as just put a screenshot or something of the page to prove that you do have a YouTube, you do have an Instagram account. And then here is a QR code to both our portfolio and presentation. So this portfolio is one of our past ones that took us to the state competition and won us the Think Award as a runner-up. And then this presentation is accessible to all if you would like to be able to review it on your own time along with this YouTube video. But thank you all for watching, and I once again encourage you all to subscribe and check out our other videos that we have on our channel.